The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program host and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by TCN TV Network Incorporated. Due to the social nature of this broadcasting channel, videos may contain content copyrighted by another entity or person. The TCN TV Network claims no rights to the said content. TCN TV Network cannot be held accountable for the copyrighted content. TCN TV Network is a messenger and sharer of information and strives to verify but cannot warrant the accuracy of copyrights or completeness of the information on this program.
And then we expand on them with very. I'll finish off the change by buying gum. Pardon? What? And it took me a while to decipher what he was saying. I came up with we can get better at what we're weak at, and we can even get better at what we're strong at. What makes communication healthy or effective? And Welcome to this edition of What Matters. I'm your host, Erica Elita, and today I am here with the brilliant, the amazing, the yeah, that too. So I am blessed to have two brilliant, articulate, and can I say handsome psychotherapists with me here today to discuss the topic of loneliness. Now, I will begin by introducing my regular co-host, my friend, and actually your mentor too. I didn't know if I had told you yet that I had also stuck that label on you for myself. And my mentor.
Job description. I know, I'm so honored.
Andrew L. Blackwood, a.k.a. Coach Drew.
That's me.
From Coach Drew Can. So Andrew is an author, The Art of a Genuine Apology.
That's it.
He is a psychotherapist. How long have you been practicing? Go ahead, give up the age. Go
15 plus.
15
years.
plus, so now we pick a round number and then we throw plus on the end. This is how we're going to roll that, okay? So you're going to do the same?
I'm going to do the same.
And a speaker. And Andrew has recently co-hosted the Men's Mental Health Summit. It happened November 9th with the amazing Dr. Vidal Regisford. Dr. Vidal, and I love this. I had to repeat this because I watched a video that Andrew and Vidal did the other day. And what I loved was Andrew said that Vidal is not just brain smart, but he's heart smart.
Oh.
And I really liked that. I really loved that. I thought it was amazing because, you know what, to me, what we give back, what we give to our community means a lot more than just what we do every day. Now, even in dating, I'm more like, so what do you do to the community? You know, I think that's a bigger tell of the person you are than just what you do for your job. But he's managed to roll them into one. So also to a psychotherapist with a PhD. He consults, also speaks, and does wonderful things like appear on What Matters to talk to my audience about loneliness. So welcome, gentlemen. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having us.
It is a delight.
It is a delight. Again, we almost made it to a whole year, but the last time I saw Vidal was in February. So I'm very glad that I got to squeeze two into 1 year. And maybe next year I can do three. I'm ambitious. We'll aim for three. So today we're speaking about loneliness. So let's start at the beginning, where I always like to start, which is with definition. What is loneliness? What is loneliness? So Selena, you want to pull up that definition? Okay, loneliness. So there were some more, clinical ones, but this one I'm going to ask Vidal and Andrew if they agree. Feeling empty, unwanted, unimportant. Social relationships lack quality and quantity.
That's a nice definition.
You like that one?
Yeah, it's a nice definition. I think what's missing from that is truly it's the absence of bond and connection with others. That's the only thing that I would add to that definition, but it speaks fairly accurately to what loneliness is.
So loneliness isn't necessarily a physical state, right?
No, absolutely not.
Because I'm an introvert, if you guys didn't know, and I like to spend a lot of time by myself. And at one point, I actually thought that there was something wrong with me, honestly. I go out, I have a lot of fun, and then my next instinct would be to spend the next day at home by myself. And then I felt guilty because I'm like, well, shouldn't I want to be with people? And like, why am I avoiding everybody? But I was happy by myself.
Right.
And then I found out more about my own personality, and I was glad to know that was just my way of replenishing. So oftentimes when I'm alone, physically alone, there's no one else, I don't feel lonely. But I have had the experience, this very strange experience of being in a room filled with people that I know and feeling very, very lonely. So, how does that happen? How can you be in a room filled with people and feel lonely?
If I may.
Please.
So let's distinguish loneliness from aloneness, and not solitariness, as in solitary confinement. The state of aloneness is a choice. Like in your instance, you wanted time apart to resettle yourself, regroup, and prepare yourself for whatever the next event or next activity would be. Being lonely amongst a group of people is that inability to feel the drive or the ability to make those social connections with others. And it comes from a deeper place within us. We're not just simply, in fact, we're not born with the notion or the sensation of loneliness. In fact, we're born thriving for attachment and bond. That's why it's so important for babies at a very early age, and hospitals around the world preach latching, connection, holding, even if it is someone other than mom. And so we are born, created, it's instinctual within us to thrive for attachment. So when one is in a room and they're not able to, it's as a result of their environment, perhaps what they have learned about what relationships have done to them that prevents them or pulls them back. Some instances, one might simply be shy, or uncomfortable with the environment, might feel intimidated. But it's not something that we are necessarily born with. No, we're born with a drive to connect and to bond.
I like the distinction of choice that you make, because that's one of the questions that I ask parents when they come in. Because some parents come in because they're concerned about their teen or their child who spends so much time alone. And that first question I ask is, are they having a problem with it?
Right.
Do they want to be connected? And there's still some complexity with that, because someone might feel anxious and feel more comfortable, to themselves, and might be content because they don't have that degree of anxiety. Whereas other people, children, teens, adults, people who've been divorced, people like all stages of life, people can say, I'm good. I'm good with this amount of contact and this amount of knowing. But to your point about being in a room and being alone, there is the reality that many people who feel this loneliness, sometimes they want to be connected and don't know how to be. But other times there's a perception that other people don't want me around. Like, I'm not welcome. They're not connecting with me the way that I want them to, or I expect them to. So they end up alone and feeling lonely because of a perception.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Is loneliness a mental health issue?
It definitely can be.
For sure it can be.
It definitely can be. Or it can add to one. It can create one. It can be a catalyst for one.
Okay.
I remember when I was in high school, some of the most depressing years of my life, high school.
For a lot of people.
For a lot of people. Some people say it's the glory days. No, for me, those were hell days.
Right.
And so part of my depression was based on this idea that life wasn't the way that I wanted it to be, and I couldn't fix it. I was experiencing this powerlessness, but nobody really understood where I was and what I was going through. So then I was dealing with this on my own.
Right.
So it didn't necessarily cause the experience of depression, but it was a part of it, right? I didn't know how to communicate what I was going through. Of course, there were people who would have listened, but I didn't really believe, or I didn't know how to convey what was going on for me.
Okay, so loneliness can be either a component of a mental health issue, or it can actually kind of be the start of, that going down that path,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And I think the insight that we want to offer here is that when one state of loneliness is over a period of time, in such a way that affects their thoughts, their moods, their emotions, and as such their behavior, resulting in isolation, alienation, then you're probably bordering what is the early stage or early signs of a mental illness, most definitely. So think about it as a trajectory or as a continuum. So one is alone, choice. One feels lonely, but has a desire for social connection, may not have the skills, the competency, may perceive others are treating them in a way so they back off, to the point where that is now over a period of time and is now embedded. So they begin to believe that this is their world.
This is how it has
feel
to
and
be.
Express emotions that are related to that. And then, yes, the behaviors, the isolation, typically, the alienation, the lack of desire to do the things that once brought them joy, or being invited out, no, I'm not going to go, and that being a repeated kind of message.
A catch-20. It's like a catch-22 where you want to go out and then you're invited out and you become anxious, so you turn down the invitation, and then you're sad you're home alone, and then the next time comes up and eventually people stop inviting you, and now that's reinforced in your head. Look, no one invites me anywhere, and now it's a loop and it's a downward spiral. When we come back from this break, we are going to discuss a little bit about the causes of loneliness. How does loneliness come about? And something else that I'd really like to speak about, well, I'd like you guys to speak about, is specifically loneliness in men. You have a unique perspective, because I think that is something that's happening more and more in our society. As we said in our title, it is an epidemic, and we would like to try to help. So we will be right back after this break.
My name is Trish Curling, and I am an online coach, personal trainer, and yoga teacher, and your new host of Shaping Life, which is all about understanding that we have the ability and the control to take charge of our health and wellness. But we can't do it alone, and I can't wait to sit down with the best in the industry. Please tune in every Friday at 1 p.m. live here on the TCN Network.
It doesn't take long before someone does, and before it's clear that Roshana Jakaran's sense of solitude runs deeper.
Feels very lonely, and I don't feel like I belong sometimes.
Yeah. And describe it to me. What does it feel like when you're feeling lonely?
I feel sad. Sometimes I feel like people don't care about me.
It's revealing and heart-wrenching. This from a 10-year-old who does have friends, and yet already feels how fleeting these moments of connection can be, how she already treasures them.
Welcome back to this edition of What Matters. I'm your host, Erica Lita, and today I am here with Coach Drew Ken and Dr. Vidal Regisford. And today we are speaking about loneliness, the epidemic of loneliness. This is taking over so many people's lives. And in my research, as I was doing my research, we were just talking about if loneliness was really a mental health issue. And one of the things is that with all things that affect our minds, they can affect our bodies and vice versa. And Selena, if you'd pull up the slide on the physical effects of loneliness. And I was actually very surprised with some of these. And, Erica's site is so bad. But I can see sleep deprivation, an increase in drug use, less exercising, it will actually suppress your immune system, weight gain. And so there are a lot of physical effects from feeling lonely. And what was interesting is these symptoms are consistent. Every resource that I looked at, they talked about the same symptoms. And very interestingly, one of the things they talk about, which I mean, was smoking. The more lonely someone is the more chance they have of smoking, and the more they will smoke often. So I thought that was interesting. But loneliness actually has a physical effect on your body. And as Dr. Regisford and Andrew were saying before the break, it can actually be the beginning of mental health decline, or it could be a component of an already existing problem. Because from what I'm understanding, a big part of loneliness is in the perception of your perception of how you're perceived.
So, yes. So, what I was going to say is very rarely do I label one thing as the cause of a mental health concern, condition, disorder. There's usually a number of
Oh, we
factors.
can't just point fingers at people?
No, people
Okay.
or things,
Too
right?
complex. We're too complex.
Exactly. We're wonderfully complex. What we eat, how we exercise, if we exercise, where we congregate, all of those things make a difference to our physical health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. So when I think about loneliness, as you highlighted before the break, it's not about a sense of being an individual or being alone. It is really about the beliefs that are attached to feeling lonely, the emotion of loneliness. So concerning beliefs would be, I don't belong. Nobody likes me. I'm worthless. Nobody understands me. So in some of the work that I've done over the years where we kind of dissect the beliefs and what they call cognitive reconstruction, if you want, where you rebuild your thoughts, you first identify what are these things that I believe about myself and I believe about others in the world. And then you have a better chance of saying, okay, well, is this really true? Like the girl in the video, she has friends.
Right.
Those are genuine moments of care and connection. But when those moments are over, the question is, what is she thinking? What is she telling herself? What is she repeating herself over and over and over? What are those beliefs based on? And then it's a Dr. Vidal mentioned the period of time. And if you think about our thoughts in terms of an equation or a ratio, the more you think something is the more you're going to feel something. And the more you feel and think that thing is the more you're going to believe that thing. And as you were saying, that's what we manifest in our lives. So if she were to think, wow, these people really love me. They actually like me and I like them and we get along well. If she was remembering that moment over and over and over and reminding herself and believing that and feeling that, that would shift the ratio and that would shift her experience.
And that's exactly the direction that we want to go. So if we were to roll this tape forward and we were to work with that young girl around those positive messages, so debriefing that experience, was it good? What did you like about it?
Right.
You know, how did you feel connected? And asking her, requesting that she continues to repeat those messages. My guess is over a period of time, again, over a period of time becomes important, she would not be sitting in that chair because she'll feel quite confident going into recess knowing she has good social connections and bonds to individuals that are like her that she can play with and have fun. And so, again, the work ahead of us is always to reconstruct those negative thoughts that affect our mood and then subsequently affecting our behavior. And so fundamentally for me, when I look at that clip, I think about, well, what informs that young girl's behavior at such a tender age? What might have happened? What messages did she have? And what experiences might she have had that has brought her there? And there are a myriad of examples of things that could have happened. It could have been that when she was at a much earlier grade, she tried to connect with a group of girls and she was not included. So she's felt excluded. She might have been told that she looks a certain way and presents a certain way, and so therefore she's not fit. And then if she's spoken with an adult about that, an adult might have simply dismissed that.
Yeah. minimize.
Notwithstanding that there's deep emotional pain at being excluded. So I go back to what essentially psychodynamic, and I think, well, what happened? What went wrong if we're all born with this innate drive and capacity to build connection and bond. It's only when we're rebuffed that we either have developed the resilience to respond and still fight through that, or we scale back and continue to scale back and continue to scale back until such time we believe, nah, it's not worth it. If I do, this is what's going to happen, so I'm not going to be bothered. I've been hurt before, I'm not going to be hurt again. And so we find and create a world, a world of loneliness around us, despite the strong desire within us to have bonds and connections.
That's very interesting. And first, I'll address what Andrew had said, because one of the things that you taught me is there's a big difference between what we feel and what is true. But we can completely alter our world just by dealing with what we feel and ignoring the reality of what's going on. So if that one girl in grade 1 told me I looked funny and she didn't want to be my friend, and I held on to that, and now I'm taking that baggage with me, and I'm going to grade 2 and 3 and 4, and here now I'm in grade 5, and all I still hear every time I go to approach somebody is, you look weird, I don't want to be your friend. And that's not what you said, and that's not what you said, but I'm just going to assume that's what you're going to say, because that's how I feel. I feel that I do look weird, and now this is becoming my reality.
And if I can add to that, what happens is when you're now that 30-year-old woman or that 40-year-old woman, that little girl still resides within you.
Mm-hmm.
That little boy still resides within you. We're never too far from our past experiences. We're intimately connected to our present as well as to our past.
Yes.
And our past informs, in some unhealthy ways, what we do in the present and how we see the future. So that 30-year-old woman goes back automatically in her mind to, I remember what happened in grade school. I'm going to keep away from women because they're trouble or they say negative things.
You just touched on something big there. Really, really big.
I know I did.
I know you did, because he's a smart man. And the idea was, I was going to ask him about men, but I will in the next segment, because I think, touching on the childhood aspect of loneliness, that with some people it seems really that they were always that lonely person. It's something that's followed them their whole life. And then sometimes it's situational. Things happen and people shift that way. But you just said something that is really important. And I will ask you guys to speak on men, because you're men, but as the only woman on the stage, I will address that. I'm not going to speak to those girls because, I'm not even going to let them reject me. If I don't approach, you can't reject. Now here comes in RBF. That's resting bitch face for anyone who doesn't know. And there are so many times that a lady walks into the room, especially if she's a good-looking woman, an attractive woman, and I see the body language of other women in the room changing. Oh, she thinks she's this, or oh. And I'm like, if you really pay attention, you'll see she's very shy. And they're like, what? I said, you just have to pay attention. Sometimes people come off as standoffish or, not engaging because they're shy. It's not everybody who doesn't engage that they're mean and they have these bad. Sometimes she's just a shy lady who doesn't want to be rejected, so she doesn't put herself in there. And I think that, when I hear women say things like, well, I don't have a lot of girlfriends because they're mean, or, I don't really get along with women, first I feel very sorry for them, because I just know such a great bunch of women. But I think it goes back to some hurt, some kind of cliquish rejection at a younger age from that group of maybe mean girls. And they pull that with them through their 30s and their 40s. And it breaks my heart, because you're not a teenager, you're not in elementary school anymore. And being in the company of women is one of the most, as a woman, is one of the most empowering things that you can have. So to any women out there, and this is something I noticed this on my makeup journey when I started selling makeup. I started out in an MLM trying to sell some mascara. And what I discovered through that were how many lonely adult women they were. And it ended up changing my whole mission, because as we gathered together and, got in front of our mirrors, and there's something very special about looking at yourself. And then they started to speak. And I realized that they were all around the table together, hiding behind their mirrors, looking at themselves, and they were desperate to reach out to one another. They really needed friends. As adult women, they had they're no longer connected with high school friends, college friends, people get married, they have
Transitions of
children,
life.
transitions of life. And now you have all of these women in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and they are desperately lonely. And again, if this sounds like you, if the next time you're hesitant to reach out to a new group of people, or you walk into a room and you immediately assume someone's mean or someone doesn't have good intentions, I would like you to pause and really reflect. Because you know me, think about your thinking, right? Are you really going back to something that's happened long ago in your life and you're superimposing it on this moment here, 20, 30, 40 years later? So, of course, our 10 minutes goes by way too fast. But in the next segment coming up, we're going to start off with a lovely little clip about a woman. She's a middle-aged woman, and she talks about her loneliness. And then Dr. Vidal and Coach Drew are going to talk to us about men and their loneliness. So we will be right back after this break.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
It's so shameful. And it makes you feel vulnerable. Sometimes I have a tendency to feel disconnected and not part of any one community or tribe.
A tribe, a place to belong.
So in that clip, we have a lady, and actually she's trying to join, I believe it's the Navy. Yeah, the Canadian Navy. And she talks about the shame of loneliness. That it's, there's another clip where she says, you know, remember years ago we used to whisper cancer? I remember that when my mom would tell me, you know, Mr. So-and-so has cancer. They're like, what? You know, I'm a little kid, didn't understand. Why are you whispering? And not understanding, I'd be like, Mom, but he didn't give it to himself. So there was a point in time where we whispered the word cancer. And she says, you know, we haven't even reached the point that we whisper loneliness. It's still unspoken. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of people that, especially as adults, to say that they are lonely, they feel a great shame in it. And she speaks of finding her tribe, not feeling as though she really ever belongs anywhere. I believe she's in her mid-30s, and she does speak about feeling this way for most of her life, just never feeling like she's really a part of anything. And so this tryout in this group, there's something about common experiences. And recently, I made a quote and I said, there's that saying, blood is thicker than water. I think that shared experience can be even thicker than blood. And what we share, what we go through together, bonds us very deeply. And so she's seeking to bond with others through this experience of going through this training camp, sharing the physical exercise. Physical exercise is very good for your mental health, people, and the experience. And this is the first time in a long time that she feels like she belongs with anyone. So she has children, was married, has friends, has family, and still feels desperately alone, as though she doesn't really belong anywhere. And this seems to be something that's happening more and more with the people in that middle age group, 30s, 40s. Can you speak to that? Why are we seeing this shift? And there's actually, before you do speak to it, Selena, can you pull up, there's that stat, that map. It's very boring. It's black and white. There we go. Okay, now I'm really hoping both of your eyes are better.
Chart 1, number of persons living alone by age and sex, 1981 and 2016.
Right, so the dark gray line is the 1981, and then the blue line is the 2016. So you see how much bigger the numbers are.
Yeah.
A massive increase. And what's interesting, the chart on the left, which I believe are the men. Note the chart on the right, which is the women, it maintains the same shape, if you notice that. So there's an increase in number, but it's the same age groups. Whereas in men, there's a huge increase in middle age of men living alone. Now, this isn't people who are lonely, but these are people who physically live alone. And these stats come from Stats Canada. So now, as I was looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, can the divorce rate and maybe even the reduced number of people who are living, making that nuclear family have a big part to do with loneliness?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I think it would be interesting to correlate this with the divorce statistics that's out there and to see if there's any overlap or any connection. And it's not surprising that it's happening to men at that middle age. But I think for me, when I look at that, what comes to mind is, what are people experiencing? So if it's not divorce, separation, or significant life event like the loss of a spouse, or perhaps a criminal history that might have disconnected them from friends, or perhaps they're dealing with an addiction such as drugs, alcohol, that naturally people say, well, look, I don't want to be around you anymore. I think the essential feature of this is when you're disconnected, there's a sense that you're also rejected, that you're being judged by others, that others look at you as weird or odd. And so in an age of technology that adds to the strain, an age of technology, we've got cell phones, WhatsApp, Facebook, this, that, and the other. You can choose to be isolated, which will bring about loneliness, rather than putting those devices down and picking up the phone and calling someone. I'm waiting for the day when we can get to a place like we have with drinking and driving, cigarette smoking, and what it does to people. Who say, look, generally speaking, this is not good for you. To drink and drive is not good. That people feel confident to say, no, I feel lonely. And that triggers within us as human beings, because we already have it. I can guarantee you, if my friend here called me on a Thursday, which we usually do a check-in Thursday morning, the best day of the week, by the way, folks, that I said to him, I'm feeling really lonely today. I'm certain it will trigger something in him that will cause him to say, okay, well, let's do something. Let's talk about it. But if we don't, it remains silent, and we suffer in silence. Changing the narrative around loneliness, bringing it to the forefront like mental health and any of the other ills that we've learned about over the last 100 years becomes important. Naming and saying without the fear of shame or embarrassment or being judged that you're weird or you're odd. No.
And this lends to what we were going to talk about in terms of men and socialization. We are socialized to win. to excel. And even amongst the team dynamic, the MVP is praised. There's something about being on top, being a single solitary soul that has been praised and nurtured in our culture. So unlike women, we're less communal. So that's part of it. And I think that our awareness of that, what drives us to pursue on our own. I have 2 daughters, and they're very different. And I looked at how they learned to climb stairs. It's strange, but one of them, the eldest one, she's like me, just kind of haphazard. She kind of, takes 1 or 2 steps at the same time and not really paying attention, not looking. And the other one, very different. She goes up 1 step, turns around, comes back down. Goes back up that 1 step until she's got it. Both of them found different ways to do it, but both of them felt a sense of pride. And they say, I did it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when that becomes the definition of who we are, particularly as men, then when I'm facing this challenge of loneliness or depression or job loss, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to deal with this on my own. And then that forms that cocoon where we isolate ourselves and we're left for periods of time dealing with it or not dealing with it.
Okay, isolation. Interestingly, during the video where you guys discussed men's feelings, men's emotions, and you had said that one of the biggest myths were that men don't express their emotions. And then you spoke about the man cave, which I thought was very interesting because there's another gentleman I know and he talks about the man cave and how the men need the man cave, and it could be the living room, but they just need a space to go and be by themselves. Doesn't this kind of reinforce this idea that you want to be by yourself? I'm so confused. You have to explain you to me. What's happening here? Well, you want a man cave, but so you don't want to be alone?
So let's go back to what the man cave epitomizes. The man cave is that square box, typically where there's a big screen TV and a reclining chair. And there's perhaps a little container there, a little placeholder where one can put a glass or a brown beverage. Let's put it that way. And that's my space for a period of time. I think if we talk to men about how much time do you really want to spend in that, they'll say, no, I need that for a break. That's when I get home from work. I need that. By and large, they don't want to be in that cave 24/7 every day. And if they are, it's typically, again, because something has happened in their world that is causing them to isolate. But that man cave is that reprieve where I can watch a hockey game, a basketball game by myself, uninterrupted, and that's my space. We all have that in our lives. We all create those moments that is just for us and nobody else. And so let's distinguish that. I think the lonely male is one who, in spite of having relationships that are passive relationships, so they're not engaged relationships, they're not vulnerable relationships. He experiences this isolation, this feeling of loneliness that doesn't really secure him in that network of relationships or friends. So when there's a crisis, who do I speak to? Do I really feel comfortable speaking to this person about it? And that's where we have a problem, because that state over a period of time will only spiral further. So when it comes to experiencing a medical problem, and we know of this, some men suffer medically because they haven't reached out to a friend and said, look, I'm going to be having some tests, whether it be prostate typically is the one that's more and more common these days. Men die without their friends knowing
that,
and that is tragic because they've isolated themselves, and the fear and the shame and the embarrassment that they will be judged or they will be perceived differently, or more importantly, less of a man, right, prevails. Should not.
Selena, how much time do we have left in this segment? Because you just put that timer up and you know I'll use it all.
We ran out.
Oh, we ran.
We're in the next segment. We're without the break.
We did that again. Okay, so when we come back from this very quick break, we are going to, I actually want to speak a bit more about men, and we will talk a little bit about the elderly, and then we just want to know what we can do. You always provide solutions. We need solutions to this. So we'll be right back after this break. Sorry, Selena.
At Benjamin Law, we understand the real cost of personal injuries. As the victim of an accident, you may be the one who's physically hurt, but your main concern is that your family are the ones who will pay the price. Benjamin Law will be there for you, helping, supporting, and working tirelessly to resolve your personal injury case. Call 1-855-899-4878 or visit benjaminlaw.ca and let our family of lawyers help your family.
World-famous spiritual astrologer and psychic Pandit Sai is born to serve people. He's an expert on palmistry and horoscope. He can handle all problems and give Vedic solutions for business, job, love, marriage, husband and wife problems, children, personal, and many others, including depression. He also performs pujas to clear all sorts of obstacles. Call Pandit Sai and see changes in your life now. 647-766-1419. Located at 2895 Derry Road, East Mississauga, Airport Road and Derry.
I lost my wife a few months ago.
Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that.
There's time here to connect, even if it's over losses.
It does help with loneliness. When you see that somebody else is lonely, it helps by saying, well, yeah, I'm here. I know what you're going through, but, you know, and you feel good, too. Okay, you have a great day. Okay.
A moment like that, it's what keeps her going. And so she waits for the next one.
Welcome back to this edition of What Matters. We always talk a lot during the break. I almost didn't realize we were coming back on. We have a good time. I am here with Dr. Vidal Regisford. You are amazing. Thank you so much for all your service to the community and everything that you do and you give back and speaking to our men. So desperately needed. And Coach Drew, who can and does always consistently being here. We have a lot of conversations at about 10 to 6 as we sit in traffic in Brampton rushing to the station. And then when we get here, look at us, looking all composed, right?
Right.
So today we're talking about loneliness. In the last section, we were talking a little bit about the man cave and Erica's confusion. So do you want me to leave you alone? Do you not? Should I show up? Should I not?
You can rest assured, we never want you to leave us totally
never
alone.
No. Leave them totally alone. And something that I've noticed that I've had to tell other males is, you know, when men come in my DM and they're like, well, you know, men don't like to talk about these things, this and that. I'm like, no, that's not true. They're like, well, how would you know? I'm like, because they talk to me. And then they stop. And I said, perhaps because I'm not so judgmental and they don't think that I'm going to tear them down. And there's something about my disposition. I leave the open door. I take people very much as they are. And so, yeah, men say all kinds of stuff. And other men are shocked by this. Right. That men want to talk about things. And I do have a few men that say, you know, they send me messages and they say, you know, I would really like to connect with some other men. I find my friends aren't engaged. I would like that group of friends. And I'm not finding it. How do I start this? So I like when you guys give us the solution. So I'm speaking more specifically to men right now, and I did offer suggestions to women. Honestly, you'd be amazed how many people feel exactly as you do and are so willing to build a friendship. It starts with a smile. It starts with a welcoming engagement, a smile, a hello. It is amazing how far that will take you. But for men, so I don't know, does it work the same? Like my kid, he goes to the playground and he's really simple. He's like his mom, hi, I'm Darius, you want to play? I kind of do the same thing as an adult. I'm Erica, you want to talk? Like, can we do something? So I don't know, does it work the same for men?
You know, it can. And I think we had a wonderful experience with our first men's mental health summit. That was in November. And there were about 50 men who came out.
Okay,
I mean, this
amazing.
was a last-minute call out to men to talk about mental health, our mental health concerns, those we have for other people in the community. And it was a really, really impactful session where Vidal and myself, we're just two of the men who are putting this together. We kind of broad stroked what mental health is, some of the factors contributing to it. And there was such a reception, a warm reception, and an appreciation for us coming together and talking. And so when I think about loneliness and how to address it, there are two things that come to mind. One is community, right? Community, community, community. And a lot of us don't have it. We talked about, the young girl who thinks, mean girl this, mean girl that. But don't forget, they probably have aunties and aunties and grand aunties, and all of them are fighting. And it's not just about, the stuff that happen in school.
Yeah.
It's our family stuff
Yes,
that
you're
we
absolutely
don't address.
right. Yeah.
And we don't realize that that is sending a message to the next generation. So if we want to impact change, let's think about community, not just outside of our house, but inside our families. So when I think about community outside of our house, I also think about connecting around purpose. That video of the lady and the connection that she's having as she's training, there's a sense of fellowship and communion.
Yes.
Because they have a central goal. And as a coach, and I like the term coach because it's a lot more user friendly, but I'm a facilitator of change. And when I work with men, what I really look at is, who are you? What's your purpose? Why are you here? Why were you created? What are you gifted to do? What are you gifted to give? And that automatically starts to generate a conversation around community. Who are you here to serve? Who are you here to help? Because in that environment, it reinforces, I am someone of worth. I have something to give. It speaks to intention. So when you go to an exchange, you have something to offer. It's one thing to say like, oh, I'm needy. Nobody likes me, nobody, right? Yeah. But when you say, listen, I've got something of worth to give. I am someone of worth to share. It shifts that dynamic. So I think, again, community and purpose, those things, and when you combine those things, relationships, they start to come so much easier.
So go follow your hobby. The thing that you love to do, engage in that, and you will definitely connect with like-minded people because they're there doing what
If
they
I can
love.
add, I would go slightly deeper. I think, and I said it earlier on, I think each of us have to examine that little boy and that little girl within us. I think we have to do that introspection, that self-effacing work that says, what happened? Why am I here? Why am I here? I can get up, I can function, I can go to work, take care of myself, all of these things, but yet emotionally, I'm at a dysfunctional level. So examining the self, what happened, and being authentic, vulnerable enough to say this is what it is, and then begin the outer work. So start with the self, and then acknowledge it for what it is. I am lonely, and I'm lonely because of X, Y, and Z. Or I believe it's X, Y, and Z. And it's not about blaming someone. It might have been about some experiences. So how do I then begin to create that pathway, which is both a neural pathway, a cognitive pathway, and an emotional pathway to building relationships? And it might be, as we've seen in the video and as you've articulated, and that is, you know what? I'm going to join a group and start doing something. And with social media, there are all these meetup groups. And I'm even going to just go and just sit in the back and observe. And trust me, someone will come or they'll have some activity that will force you to come out of your shell. And in that moment, be bold enough and courageous enough to trust in that moment, to trust that someone who has reached out to you and has risked is doing it with no agenda, no harm, no foul. They're sincerely interested in you in that moment. And as such, you reciprocate. Because fundamentally, when we're in this reciprocity, this state of reciprocity of giving and taking, we build a sense of connection and trust and bond, and it flourishes. But it requires us to trust that you're coming to me with good intent. And in spite of the negative messages, the negative, my trauma, all of those things, I'm going to believe in this moment. I'm here. I'm going to trust in it and give accordingly.
Both of you gave such wonderful, again, solutions. I don't just come to complain and tell you what's wrong with everything. We come to provide solutions. And becoming involved, following your purpose, having that conversation. I tell you, becoming a better person is not easy, and it's not always pretty, and it can get rather ugly, but it's beautiful on the other side. But there are hard parts. One of the things I want to add in before Andrew and Dr. Vidal tell you about the next Men's Mental Health Summit. I'm trying to sneak in. I'm trying to figure out how. But I'm trying to figure out how I could get in there. But my suggestion is, as Dr. Vidal brought up, social media. I'm a big fan of social media. Have you guys noticed? And I use this analogy all the time. You can take a knife and you can kill everybody in the room, or you can take that same knife and cut up a loaf of bread and share it. A tool is a tool. It's what you do with it that makes it good or makes it bad. So for all the people who say, oh, social media and it's fake, and there are so many studies that show if you spend too much time on your phone and you're following the wrong things, it will actually make you feel lonelier and disconnected. But if you use this amazing tool, which is going nowhere, social media is forever now, guys, and you use it for a different reason, you can connect tremendously. I've met some of my greatest friends in real life that I see and I touch through social media. So before we wrap this up, can you gentlemen please tell our audience, how do they connect with you? Where do they find you? And what's coming up next?
Well, Coach Drew Can on Instagram, on YouTube, info@coachdrew.ca. And we're doing another, we're going to be doing quarterly installments. It's a collective conversation about mental health in our community. And the next one will be on January the 18th. If you want more information, just email us at hello@letmenspeak.com. I know, I love it.
Really like that.
And it's interesting because we're giving ourselves permission to speak about our individual experiences, about our collective experiences, but also to speak with each other.
Yes.
Which I think is so powerful and needed, well needed.
Well needed.
And folks can get a hold of me at my colleague here. We collaborate. It's a collaborative practice. I think for me, what I want to leave the audience with is this quality that we all have. And it's this imbibing trust of the other. We're born with it. When babies are born, they don't shy away from mom. In fact, they cleave. We tend to forget that as adults. Remember that we are created with this ability to build and strengthen connections. And if we do that, good things happen. In fact, the world that we live in, generally speaking, the universe that we live in is good. Good always prevails, but we have to trust in it.
I love that. That is a wonderful way to end today. I thank you all for joining us here on What Matters. I don't know where these in the middle of the winter. I'm sorry, that distracted me. So I want to say thank you again for joining us on What Matters. I am your host, Erica Lita, and I will be back next Tuesday, same time, same place, with more wonderful, wonderful doers of our community.